on behalf of Jack and Ann and myself, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to you all. Thanks for tuning in to this month's Simply Smarter webinar, all about the Datassential 500 report, which will release very, very soon. If you have previously tuned into any of our other webinars, then you should already know that we love and engage in vocal audience, and we love to see active discussions flourishing in the chat. But as always, please be respectful, please be constructive, but also don't be shy. Drop your thoughts, ask any questions that you might have, and we will try our best to answer any of them while we can. As a reminder, if you haven't already, please switch your chat setting from host and panelist to everyone so that we can all engage in a collective discussion together. And I figure I'd get this out of the way now, but I will remind folks later that you will be able to access these slides and a recording of this webinar after it's over. So don't worry if you can't catch every single percentage or every single number. You have the ability to access everything later anyway. And a few other housekeeping announcements at the top of the hour. We have a couple other webinars happening between the months of June and July that you should totally check out if you're able to. On June 17, our colleagues Emily Tang and Amanda Torgerson will be leading a webinar with IFMA titled Winning with Social Listening and Data-Driven Food Away from Home Strategies, showcasing Datassential's latest social listening innovation and technology. On June 26th, our trendologists Claire and Renee will be hosting a non-alcoholic beverage webinar about coffee, tea, refreshers, all of the trends related to this bustling space. And actually, in fact, we will be tapping into a little beverage trends ourselves in this particular webinar too. And then finally, the next Simply Smarter webinar in July will be the Mid-Year Trends webinar. That is a flagship report that we release every single year, and it's always one to watch. So definitely tune in next month if you're able to. So without further ado, let's begin. For links to attend those webinars, please feel free to visit our website. You'll be able to find all information about future webinars there too. So with that out of the way, we have a packed schedule for everyone, and I'd love to get started. And yeah, so the Datassential 500 report, this is the 7th year that we've done this report now. It is our annual census study, an industry benchmarking study that ranks and analyzes the largest restaurant chains in the United States to uncover emerging trends and movements, trying to figure out if large restaurant chains are a significant microcosm of the overall industry. What can we learn about these top performers and how they relate to the rest of the industry and consumer preferences and perspectives? So in order to create this report, as always, we lean into a large and thorough combination of different data sources. We first ask as many chain operators on our list as possible to directly provide their latest performance figures, which includes end of 2024 unit count, system-wide sales, and AUV. We then supplemented all of that data with our own internal platforms and also data from 3 of our major intelligence tools, which is US chains, brand performance, and launches and ratings. So we have not only annual performance data and openings data, but also consumer perspectives on all of the brands that we list, and also menu ratings and LTO releases. Top chains are then ranked by 2024 Q4 unit count, that's December 31st of the end of 2024, and then they're categorized into 16 reporting segments based on their cuisine type and service format. You'll find out what those 16 reporting segments are a little later. So let's get into the numbers, starting with the broadest picture. I would say that throughout 2024, resilience was kind of the name of the game, even among the nation's largest and leading restaurant chains. You'll see here that the brands in this year's Datassential 500 ranking expanded their domestic footprint by around 1.5% and grew aggregate sales by 4.7%, which is just slightly above the average food away from home inflation rate of roughly 4.1%. This year, we were also able to tap into our US chains database and pull some Q1 2025 unit count data for comparison. And after the first 3 months of this year, I can report that the total unit count for the top 500 chains in our database has decreased by about 0.2%. So not a significant decrease from the end of 2024, but in the last but that is only at the end of Q1 2025. So more to come as the year progresses. Looking exclusively at unit growth, you'll find that 10 out of the 16 reporting segments saw a net increase in total units between 2023 and 2024. The top performing segments in this domain should not be surprising to you if you've observed any of our previous Datassential 500 webinars or have seen any movements in this industry. These are segments that are typically in high demand among consumers. You have healthy food, you have fried chicken, coffee, global cuisines, desserts, and snacks. All of these are hot button trends among the consumer base. The one caveat here that I'd like to highlight, my apologies, to highlight is FSR Sports Bar on the left here. What this segment contains are chains that combine classic American fare with a strong focus on alcoholic beverages and televised sports. And the chains that are currently in this segment are performing decently in terms of units, um, but but the number of brands that comprise this segment has actually decreased over the years. So even though the chains that are currently existing in the segments are doing well, we've actually seen many sports bar chains fall out of our top 500 list throughout the past 4 or 5 years. So that is just something to note. I believe this segment is now our smallest segment among all 16. So this could be a scale. The scale of the segment could contribute to why that percentage could be as high as it is.
Hey,
I'd like to.
if
Yeah.
we could real quick, there's been a couple of comments that there's getting some audio feedback. Can we take maybe a second to try to figure this out? I don't know if it's me or something else. I'm going to mute and see if that fixes it, and maybe we just troubleshoot this on the fly.
Yeah, totally. Thank you for noting, Jinchak. Emily Bass in the chat is saying that it is you. Okay. Audio people are saying that audio sounds good. Thank you for noticing, and we will continue monitoring this throughout the webinar. And if anything pops up again, please let us know. This was actually a place that I wanted to pause and ask you, Anne and Jack, if there are any other surprises here, anything you'd like to highlight, any notable comments before we move on to sales.
Yeah, I know I'm going next with sales, so I have thoughts on that one. But I think this fits, especially knowing what we're going to see with some of the sales changes coming up on the next slide. So, I think the FSR American, I know there's some big name brands in there where we've seen a lot of big headlines for that. So I think the fact that it's seen the most unit contraction, I think fits and makes sense.
Yeah. So actually on that note, let's move on to sales. So Anne, would you like to run us through these sales growth numbers?
Yeah, sure. So you'll sort of notice some color coding here, and the break is not at 0. And that is because we color coded those that had sales growth that was larger than food away from home inflation versus those where it was smaller. So the distinction here, you can sort of think of it as real growth versus nominal growth. So right here, this is all nominal growth. This is literally how dollars grew for each of these segments. But obviously, a lot of the dollar growth we saw in 2024 was inflation. As we mentioned, about 4.1%. And so anything above that is sort of inflationary growth, and there was some real growth. So you can sort of think of that as volume growth, right? So they actually sold more food. Whereas those in yellow, they're sort of below 4.1%, although they are positive sales growth numbers. Inflation ate a lot of that. So those are sort of negative in real terms. And a couple of things I'll point out here. So, LSR Salad Healthful, again, sort of seeing a lot of growth. We certainly see a lot of health trends. I will note it's also the smallest in terms of dollars. And so, just because of math, right, it's easier to grow on a smaller base. That's part of why that number is so huge. The largest segment in terms of dollars is LSR Burger. So one of the ones that is, sort of lower than inflation, and it's a lot larger than that Salad Healthful. So it's harder for those bigger segments to grow. But there's not a direct correlation. In fact, it's a very slight to basically negligible. So it's not that the larger segments aren't also growing or the smaller ones aren't, but there is some differences there with the base that are going to impact kind of how quickly sales can scale up.
Hey guys, does this look like the same pattern we've seen in previous years? The ones that are growing the fastest?
I would say it's pretty similar, though I would say two two or three of the chains that are growing really significantly in terms of sales did stand out to me. I'd like to comment on LSR Mexican specifically. The top three chains in the segment had a lot of different had really great double-digit sales growth. So Taco Bell, Chipotle, and Qdoba all grew over 10% in terms of sales. That segment overall performed pretty well this year. Pizza also had benefited from a bunch of top chains also growing their sales pretty well. Domino's, Little Caesars, and smaller brands in that segment too are also performing super well. Other than that, again, FSR Sports Bar, 4.1%, just at the cups of the inflation rate. I would say that again, I believe the sort of the effect that I mentioned earlier, right? Like the current chains existing in this segment are faring decently, but the number of brands for the segment have fallen out of the list. So it's been decreasing every year. So the segment is shrinking at the top level, but the ones remaining are performing decently. Those are just sort of my observations.
And I think you said the healthy segment's been topping the list for a number of years in a row now, right?
Yep. Pretty much every single year, and it's great that you mentioned that, Jack, because we got a question in the chat to give an example of brands that fit into this helpful bucket. It is a large number of brands, from salad chains to juice and smoothies, acai bowl. So you've got your tropical salad smoothie, you've got your Jamba, Smoothie King, Sweet Green, all of these health focused brands.
Yeah, so one of the things we look at is, how brands are sort of moving up and down the list, right? It's sort of interesting to see how they're relative to each other growing or not. And so this is their rank based on units. So not sales, but we're going back to units here. And a couple just interesting ones that we wanted to point out. One was Little Caesars, which bumped itself into the top 10. I'm curious if anyone has a theory on which one dropped down. So the 10th place one dropped down. I'll give a little hint. So the other top 10 are Subway, Starbucks, McDonald's, Dunkin', Taco Bell, Domino's, Burger King, Pizza Hut, and Wendy's. And so there's one chain. So Little Caesars again jumped up to 10th. There's one chain. I'll give a little hint. It's a LSR dessert snack chain. I don't think it's one that I would think of necessarily. Jack, I don't know if you have a guess. I'm putting you on the spot, but
No idea.
no idea. Oh, now people are getting
We've
it.
got a
Yep,
couple.
Dairy
We've got a
Queen.
couple of correct
Yeah,
answers. Yeah.
they figured it out. Maybe they needed the hint, maybe, but yeah. So Dairy Queen had been 10th on the list last year and dropped down to 11th. Another one. Yeah, right. I knew.
I mean,
You
they're
can see
still
upside
ranked
down.
number 11, so it's not that they're not
Yes.
performing well,
Oh, yes.
right?
Yeah, no, exactly. This is not a performance. It's just sort of a relative based on units, what's sort of shifting. So Wingstop, another one we wanted to point out, bumped into the top 25. They have like 14% unit growth, which is a lot for that large of a chain, particularly, right? To be that high on the list and have, double-digit growth is pretty unique. Kava, another one that we want to highlight, broke into the top 100. They had 19% unit growth. So again, just saw a lot of growth in their units in 2024. And finally, Seven Brew, another one, jumped up almost 50 slots on the list, which is amazing. They added 141 units in 2024. So some big changes in terms of chains that are kind of bumping up the list in terms of unit size.
And isn't Kava like now the 10th most valuable publicly traded restaurant company? So
I think I saw
maybe 100
something
on this
similar to
list,
that,
but
yeah.
like I think number 10 in market cap or something.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
might be.
that wouldn't surprise me at all. They've
Yep.
received a lot of great buzz and traction over the last couple of years. I think we mentioned last year that the Chicago location, the first one that opened to packed lines around the blocks. So for a chain restaurant, for something that isn't driven by sort of like chef hype or foodie types, that's something pretty noticeable to observe here too. Two other chains that I'd like to mention here that we didn't highlight on the slide. Scooter's Coffee and Raising Cane's both made their debut appearances in the top 50. And then one more thing before I move on, we had a great comment from Ted asking if when we mention units, is it talking about their global presence or just domestic market? And all of these units are all US-based markets. My apologies. My neighbor just suddenly turned on just started cutting down grass right as I started the session, so that I just needed to step away for a second. But let's continue. Since we're highlighting success stories here, I figured this is also a great place for us to officially debut a brand new initiative on our side, which we call the Datassential 500 Awards. This is a first-of-its-kind recognition program, and over the course of the last several months, our team has curated a diverse range of categories to spotlight the most dynamic and the leaders that are shaping the future of food service. And to arrive at our winners, we relied on, once again, a combination of proprietary data sources, consumer sentiment, predictive analytics, all to sort of figure out the chains that are really contributing to shaping the future of food service. So a press release just went out this morning showcasing all of our award recipients, and you can also find them listed in our up-and-coming full Datassential 500 report. But over the next few minutes, I'd like to showcase just a few of our winners. First, we have a broad category called America's Favorite Chain. And the way that we've defined this chain had the strongest consumer ratings across all major metrics, from food quality to value to service to experience. And Chick-fil-A was the chain that was awarded this category. Next, America's fastest growing chain, the chain that saw the most significant percentage unit growth in 2024, was Hangry Joe's Hot Chicken and Wings. And we'll be talking a lot about this chain a little bit later too. And then finally, America's most craved chains, which is the chain that earns top marks for craveable, constantly great tasting food, according to all of our consumer sentiment metrics, is In-N-Out this year. This is an initiative that we will be rolling out this year and all future years of this report. We have 12 other categories that we've announced on our website, but this is just a sneak peek of the first 3 of these categories and the winners for them. So yeah, keep in mind for any of the future ones that you'd like to see here. America's Value Leader is really fascinating to me. Best Coffee Chain, Best Healthy chain, Global Flavor Favorite. All of these are really, really exciting announcements. So I'm excited to share that with you.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun going through the lists and looking at the data and seeing which chains were going to top the list. So it's a fun project for us to do as well.
And I think in this kind of environment, I think it's nice to have things to celebrate, right? It's nice to have things that provides you joy and makes you feel good. So with that said, for the rest of our time here, I'd love to showcase 5 of sort of the key takeaways and the macro trends that we've gleaned from the report this year. This isn't focusing on a specific brand in general, but more so a sort of comprehensive analysis of the macro landscape and the lessons that we can learn from the top chain universe. Starting with a trend I'd like to say, health and indulgence go hand in hand. This is something that we've sort of mentioned over the last several years now, the combined rise of both consumer demand for indulgent foods and also the combined demand for healthful cuisine. In our 2025 trends report, we alluded to a term that we called little treat culture. And this is really, it was first a social media driven trend of consumers relying on foods, beverages, snacks, and little treats to help pick them up throughout the day or make them feel better when things are bad, or just to sort of cope with the stresses of everyday life. Over the past several years, we've seen snacking habits really escalate. Consumers are really taken to snacking. And little treat culture really sort of is the emotionally driven microcosm of that. We fielded some data in June, so this month specifically, asking consumers about little treat culture. And nearly a third of Gen Z consumers say they typically have a little treat, whether it's a food or a drink or a little snack, at least once per day. We don't define what that food or drink is. It's just whatever makes them happy and whatever fulfills them. Nearly 70% of consumers say that little treats are how they bring joy into their lives, while still trying to stay financially responsible too. So it's sort of a combination of both emotionally driven snacking and also a value add for some people. This is something that they can feel good splurging about because the ticket price is low enough for them to not feel so bad about it. And in an era of inflation and economic stress, consumers are constantly finding new avenues to introduce just that little bit of joy, or like Denise said in the chat, celebrating the little wins, right? So how do chains sort of fit into this equation? The lists that you see in front of you are the 26 chains that joined our Datassential 500 rankings this year. And all but 2 of them belong to limited service segments. And the chains that I've highlighted in green and are bolded over here are chains that fit pretty well into little treat culture. So whether or not they are a juice spot offering little ginger shots and a little smoothie, or desserts, or coffee, or even a chain called Savvy Sliders. It is a burger chain and they specialize in sliders. And what is a slider if not a little burger, right? So a lot of the chains that have expanded enough to join our top 500 rankings fit really, really well into this little movement that is developing among consumers. It's emotionally driven snacking. It's foods that people can pick up and enjoy and not feel too guilty about. It's things that makes them happy.
Actually, can I ask a question about this? Because I see
Yeah.
this all the time. I see this, especially a lot of times I see like young people go in and they buy. I think you're right. Like they can justify the price in their head because it's, it delivers an emotional benefit. But the
Mhm.
stuff is like sometimes very expensive. They're buying like an $8 iced tea or a $9 muffin, and I'm thinking like, how in the hell can they afford this? Like, it makes no sense to me how someone in their early 20s is consistently buying, $17, $18 of like a little snack on a daily basis. So I actually would like someone in the comments to explain to me like what the heck is going on, because like I don't think most of us could have afforded that at that age, but they're spending tons of money on this stuff. Like, is it
Yeah,
mommy daddy money? Like what is happening?
Yeah, it's a combination of things, and I think the chat is alluding to a lot of that too. We so the data that I mentioned earlier about little street culture, we have a full report coming out next month, with all of these insights that you talked about, the justifying your spending and all of the different costs about it. I think some things that people feel okay justifying a lower ticket price because they don't think about the combined effect of all of these things rolling over together. It is an instantaneous moment. They're only thinking about the little treat in front of them and not how 10 little treats across a week can really knock out your spending. It's
Yeah,
not
can you imagine like
responsible.
doing the end of year reporting like, oh my god, I spent $7,000 on iced tea and muffins this year.
Yeah, it's not responsible, it's not rational, it's emotionally driven. It's like Sandy said in the chat, they live for today, right? It's anything that can make you happy now. It's not a
Right.
responsible decision.
So one of
Um,
the prevailing comments I see in chat, maybe this is the right one, is that live for today, sure, but really it's like live at home with my parents. Is that the answer?
yeah.
Okay, there we
I
go.
don't know. I don't know if that's the answer. It could be the answer, but that's not something that we can prove for our data, so I'm not going to comment on that. But yeah, someone in the chat mentioned girl math, and I think that really is another phenomenon that's driven by social media that also contributes to this moment. It's like, oh, I can justify spending this because I did not buy lunch today, or it's like if I spend money on this little treat, I will just drop something else in my expenditure later. But
Wait,
it's all
what's the
very
term for
like
that?
hypothetical.
What is
It's
that called?
it's it's called girl math. I am not a
Why is it called
woman.
that?
It's a social media trend. I did not make that trend.
Maybe we should not touch
But
that rail. So let's move on.
yeah, I mean, it is just math, but it's really about justification, right? It's
Yeah, I was
how
gonna
you
say, I
feel
feel like
good
it's
about your
about,
decision.
right? It's emotion. Like I think even
It's
more than the
emotion.
numbers, right? It's like, oh, I had a, hard day and got a flat tire, which ironically costs you now money because now you have to repair the tire, but we're still gonna, go treat ourselves to a donut because it was a tough day. So yeah.
Yeah, or like, oh, on Monday I didn't Uber to the office, which means I have $17 now that I can spend on this treat. It's a bunch of different mental gymnastics that really, it's about trade-offs. It's all of these things combined. We're getting a little derailed from the chains conversation. This topic is really fascinating. But the reason why I bring all of this up is like you meant, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the chains that are really growing quickly and expanding into our top 500 list this year, and also the segments that are growing, like we mentioned earlier, really represent this trend super well. It's coffee, it's desserts, it's healthful treats, it's things that are easy to buy, ticket prices are low, it's not a full meal, it's snackable, it's portable, it's convenient, and it's customizable. So for example, you have here Parlor Donuts. This is one of our new chains this year. It's grown units by over 60% and grew sales by over 90% in the last year. Granted, these percentages are high because they are a smaller brand. So it's really, again, a mathematics thing. But it's a craft donut and coffee shop. They have layered donuts. They have a variety of flavors. They have a lot of vegan and keto options for folks who are observing those diets. So really a microcosm of that trend, right? And then last year we highlighted this chain too. This is again our third fastest growing chain of this year, unit wise. This is the Peach Cobbler Factory. They serve peach cobbler, as the title suggests, but they also have brownies, muffins, churros, cookies, dessert, like literally every baked good imaginable. They have it. Their menu looks like a Chinese restaurant menu for a dessert space. But they continue to sustain really, really great growth this year. And I think the very nature of consumers really wanting indulgent treats really helps propel them and sustains their momentum, right? Um, this is not limited though to young concepts or concepts that are focused exclusively on this trend. In June 2024, Panera launched a new set of savory and sweet breakfast items called the Little Big Treat menu, like alluding directly to the trend. And the flagship item on this menu, if you can look at the left here, they're called Cinnatops. They are cinnamon rolls and are topped with icing and then also more bakery items, so crumbles of cookies and brownie. Is like huge and really, really decadent. And they start at $4.79. So for anyone who finds value in like, oh, if I get something that's under $5, that's a steal for me. That is a good way to appeal to that sort of price point, right?
And we just to clarify, we're still in the healthy section.
Not well, it's health and indulgence. I'm getting to the health stuff next.
Oh, okay.
But I highlight this example mostly because this is a trend that is not limited to concepts that are only focusing on dessert. Any chain that has any relevance to sweet treats can sort of tap into this new consumer mindset and this developing trend too. So it's kind of universal in that sense. Here's the helpful stuff I talked about. So in the same survey that we fielded about little treat culture, we wanted to figure out where consumers stand on how little treats should contribute to their lives. 19% of consumers say that they only look for little treats that can make them feel healthy or feel good for them. So a juice, a tonic, a little shot. 47% say that little treats should be indulgent. It should be sweet. It should be rich. It should be decadent. It should make me feel happy. And 34% say that it can be and should be both. So this is not exclusively an indulgent trend. There's some degree of health and wellness part too. And I think this dual rising movement is kind of why chains like Kava has been able to explode so quickly. They are a pretty health-focused chain, but they're a Mediterranean cuisine. They have really indulgent items. They are not shy on using meat. I think one of their top performing LTOs this year was a steak and harissa bowl. So it's not just like I want to be healthy, so I'm only going to eat vegetables and I'm going to skim on my portions and I'm not going to eat things that make me happy. It is a combination of both.
There's a really interesting psychological framing thing that's been happening for a while. But here's the big insight: if you put something inside of a bowl, people think it's healthier. Like, end of story.
I don't think I would disagree with that. No, yeah, I think that's I think is an apt sentiment, especially in today's like fast casual driven environment. The bowl effect, Elaine says in the chat, or a wrap. But
yeah, like ask me, like, what do you think is healthier, a burrito or a burrito bowl? And all of a sudden, the second is healthier. Anything you put in a bowl, people just think it's healthier, whether it is or not. So interesting psychological phenomenon.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, that's actually really super interesting.
Well, I wonder if you have a bowl, don't you have to sit and eat it, which often actually is better for you, right? To like sit and take the time you're likely to eat less, right?
If you ate a burrito while you're moving, maybe you burn some of it off. I don't know.
Fair enough,
But
fair enough.
I don't know if that applies to a bowl of ice cream. Maybe that's where it falls apart. But bowl generally is thought of as being healthier for some bizarre reason.
Yeah, I mean, the bowls are huge. People are saying that in the chat. And I think on social media, there's been a hack for Chipotle where, like, if you want a burrito, you go in, you ask for a bowl and a giant tortilla, and then you go outside to the parking lot and pack the burrito yourself.
Yeah,
you
so you're saving
inside.
50 cents doing that than spending $17 on a muffin and an iced tea. Makes a lot of sense.
I mean, again, sometimes people don't act rationally. I think sense isn't, if we define every consumer behavior by sense, I don't think we would be standing here right now. Sometimes irrationality is what makes the industry move.
Human beings are not rational. That is very true. We're emotional. That's the end of it.
One last chain I'd like to shout out here for the healthy section, like you said, Jack, is Pure Green. They are a new chain to our list, and they are sort of a half retail, half food service concept. They have a lot of pre-packaged, ready-to-drink juices and smoothies and blends, cold pressed juice, protein shakes, acai bowls, all of the smoothie and juice strongholds, I would say. And they had some pretty excellent growth last year too. The fact that they moved a lot of their stuff to prepackaged bottles, I think it's sort of aligns itself well with that trend too. You can go in there, pick up a bottle, and go about your day, instead of waiting for someone to sort of like put veggies in a machine and like makes your juice fresh in front of you, which is a delightful experience in a different sense for maybe different consumers. But convenience and speed still reigns in 2024 and will continue to do so in 2025. This is where I sort of turn the page a little bit and sort of contextualize all of this information in 2025, because I would say where we are right now in terms of health and wellness is vastly different from where we were last year. Over the past 6 months, we've had sort of a flurry of new activity on a policy level about sort of different ingredients that can go into food service and retail food. Seed oil concerns are rising, food dye concerns are rising. We're going to delve a lot of that in with our mid-year trends report next year too. But clearly chains are responding in kind. These are just two of the most prominent examples among brands on our list. You have Sweetgreen and Shake Shack that are debuting fries that are explicitly fried without seed oils. I believe Sweetgreen is now using avocado oil, and Steak and Shake is now using beef tallow. And so, Jack, while we have you here, I mean, since you're really attuned to the space, I wanted to sort of have you speak a little bit to sort of this effect, right?
Yeah,
And
look,
where this is going.
I think the easiest way to think about this is we've done health research at Datassential for over 20 years, and for the longest time, this is up until pretty recently. If you ask people like who's responsible for your health as it relates to the food you eat or the obesity crisis, people would always say, yeah, it's like personal responsibility, right? You could put whatever food you want out there as an industry, but I'm the one that gets to make a decision about what I actually choose to put in my body, so I take responsibility for that. This is starting to flip now. We've gone from a sense of personal responsibility in people to, holy crap, you're actually poisoning me in a game that is unfair, that you're hiding stuff in the food. There's weird ingredients in here that I can, and all of it is sort of tainted. And that's no longer a personal responsibility thing. That's a you're poisoning me type of thing. And that's when things really will start to turn, I think. And I think they did research on like the type of messaging that is influential in getting people to change their behavior. I think they looked at like smoking as an example. And they found that if you tell people to stop smoking just because it's bad for you, they sort of say, yeah, but I like it. I can continue to do it. But once you start telling them, like, hey, the industry is lying to you and telling you it's okay or doing all these, unsavory things, then all of a sudden they start rebelling and they actually change their behavior. Because I think human beings, just by like our evolutionary biology, we are tribal by nature. And if the tribe used to be like, hey, I'm the tribe that enjoys having flavor and whatnot and eating whatever I want, that's fine. But once you flip the script and the tribe becomes like, oh, hey, the real tribes are the people versus the organizations poisoning the people, then you will see some behavioral change. So I think this stop poisoning mentality is just getting going. And like seed oils, we could debate about artificial dyes, and there's a whole host of ingredients. We're talking about revising the GRAS standard, generally recognized as safe, as well. There's going to be a lot of this, and I think as more of that is revealed, there will really be a sense of like, oh, wait, this has not been a fair game, and I'm not going to take all the blame for what I eat or my health condition anymore. The industry is going to bear some responsibility. So I think we as an industry should get way ahead of that and maybe bring some stuff that any objective person would say really seems like a healthier option to the table, because it's a massive opportunity, right? We do when we do the top New Year's resolutions in 6 months or whatever.
Yeah.
Like eat healthy is going to be number one. We already know that. It's the biggest unmet consumer need in America by far. It's not the number one consumer need, number one resolution in Japan, by comparison. So there's something over here, and it's a big market opportunity, and we wanted to be totally capitalistic about it. I think we should jump on board this train. So that's my take.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. So I think we've spent enough on the combination of indulgence and health and wellness now. So I'm going to turn it over to Anne and start talking about some beverages. Though I do think it does quite fit into both camps as well,
I was
right?
gonna say, yeah, I don't think we're going away from little treat culture and all that, because beverages, certainly fit into that. I mean, we were talking about, $8 coffee drinks and all, so clearly related. But I'm starting with just some data from sort of understanding 2024 and beverage LTOs and releases. The key thing to sort of note here is you can see, over the last few years, we're seeing chains introducing more and more beverage LTOs and releases. That's led primarily by QSR, but casual dining also releasing a lot of beverage LTOs, followed by fast casual and mid-scale. So we're definitely seeing, chains investing in their beverage programs, and yeah, we'll talk a little bit about more in the next slides.
Yeah, and before we move on, just a quick caveat that this includes both non-alcoholic and alcoholic
Yes.
beverages.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Yep.
Yeah.
So one chain we want to highlight, one of the sort of rapid growers that's focused on the beverage category, is Swig. So you guys may have heard it's sort of a drive-through fountain beverage chain. Some say maybe started the dirty soda trend. I don't know if that's it's that common, but
They both kind of came to the forefront at around the
right,
same time. So
right,
I think
okay,
they're
yep,
linked, right?
yep,
I mean, I would say
exactly,
Utah Mormon started the dirty soda trend, but that is technically, yeah, where it is.
right,
Yeah,
yep.
Bridget in the chat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But as you can see, massive growth in terms of units and sales for Squig. So another chain we want to highlight, HTO. So this is an iced tea chain out of Texas. And again, seeing massive growth in terms of both units and sales. And so we're seeing this. So chains are kind of leveraging some of these things. These smaller chains are investing in, and we're seeing a lot of rapid growth. And then we're seeing the bigger chains, Taco Bell, obviously, huge chain, and doing sort of, in some ways, I'd sort of call this a twist on a dirty soda. So it's actually a frozen lemonade drink where they've added kind of a vanilla cream swirl to it. And you can see it has a really high score in our launches and rating. Really popular with consumers, and a well-loved concept.
Yeah. And before we move on, I want to highlight also the 85% consumer rating for value over here too, right? I think it's really interesting to see consumers see beverages as a value-added option. And I think we're going to also see the same effect here with Applebee's drink too, right, Anne?
Yes, exactly. No, and I looked this up because I didn't believe it, but it actually was sold for $1. So you can again see a really high value rating. This is like a, blue alcoholic drink that's a little gummy brain in there, released around Halloween. So it's sort of kitschy and Instagrammy, but then also, a real value play with that priced at just $1. So and here's another one, another really high scoring beverage. This one's from Del Taco, released in February of 2024. And it's sort of leveraging, it's got these little tiny strawberry flavored popping pearls that they put on top of Sprite. Again, super popular with consumers. I checked in 2025, interestingly, they're doing something very similar, but using mango as the flavor for their poppers. And it's being leveraged, you can see there sort of, we're highlighting the Sprite drink, but it also was in some other lemonades. It was also used in kind of like an ice cream application as well.
Yeah, I feel like in 2025, you're going to keep seeing a ton of different chains put really random stuff in their drinks. Popping boba, diced fruit, foam tops, creamers. Long gone are the days where if you want to get a beverage, you expect textural, like, homogeneity. That is no longer the case. People just want more and more in their beverage too, and I think this is just sort of the start of that movement.
Yeah, absolutely. In part because they're little snacks, right? That are, replacing meals. We're definitely eating fewer meals and snacking more. So it's all connected. So another thing I'm going to touch on are sort of global flavors and safe experimentation and sort of how we're seeing that in the top 500 chains. So this is brand new research. It's going to be in a keynote we're releasing later this month or next month about global flavors. And in short, consumers are really looking for global flavors. So 60% of millennials ate a globally influenced food in the past week. And of note, we actually, when we ask consumers this, we exclude Italian, Mexican, and Chinese. Although those sort of technically are not American, and so they're global in some sense, they've been just sort of such a part of our food service world for so long that in many ways they're sort of seen as American. So when we ask about this, we're really focused on sort of like those cuisines that are past Italian, Mexican, and Chinese. So other countries, and it's still 60% among millennials, which seems very high. And then over half of consumers, choose globally influenced foods over other restaurants when they go out to eat. So again, this is something global flavors, I think, really do pull consumers, out of their house, get them into restaurants. And we're seeing that with a lot of the faster growing chains in the top 500. So one of which, K-Pot, Korean barbecue and hot pot. So this taps into global, and we're not talking about today, but it's also very experiential, right? So this is one where, there's a pot of, hot liquid in the middle of your table, and you get to cook your own food at the table. So very sort of experiential thing that you can't do that at home, right? So I think it really does lure people out of the house, both with the flavors and with the experience. And so we're seeing massive unit and sales growth for K-Pot.
Does anyone know, are these concepts where you cook your own food more profitable because they have less labor than a similar full service restaurant would?
I think,
Good
yeah,
question.
someone said in chat in theory, but I also think that also involves a lot more prep in the background too. And a lot more effort in preserving foods and making sure that they can be ready to go at any given moment. So I would say just the prep is just shifted, I would say. And a lot of these places, they actually have to train servers to go and cook it for you if you mess it up or if you take too long. So I don't think it's completely devoid of staff attention, I would say. Before we move on from this one, I'd love to highlight too that this is a full service chain with over 70% unit growth, which is super atypical for full service chains in our universe, and especially this year, where full service segments in general are really not focusing on expanding their physical presence. They're really trying to get their bottom line and their top line up versus sort of expanding their footprint. But K-Pot is taking a different approach here because they're at a point now where they can scale super aggressively, and I think it's really paying off for them. Yeah.
So here's another one. Oh, go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, I think, is there like a hot pot chain? I forget which country. Maybe it's Hong Kong. I don't know. That's like one of the most valuable restaurant brands in the world.
Are you talking about Heidi Lau?
Yeah, is that it?
I think it might be
I
that.
think
I'm not quite sure.
I think they're
but
like extraordinarily valuable, to the surprise of probably most people in this country. So
yeah, I mean the movement is then I think certainly picking up stateside too with different sort of US based chains sort of tapping into the same momentum. So I wouldn't be surprised at that assessment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but here's another one sort of tapping into sort of like regional global flavors. So Mobetta's Hawaiian style food. It's actually a pretty simple menu, although it's very interesting. They sell, you sort of pick a portion size first. So they have, it's mini, regular, and the big boy. So you can kind of they're sort of like built into the menu is sort of picking the size of your meat. And it's pretty simple. Then you have a variety of different meats, a couple different sauces. Again, a relatively simple menu, but it's sort of tapping into different flavors and different portion sizes, which I thought was really interesting for this one. And here's another one you might remember. This is our fastest growing chain by units. So Hangry Joe's Hot Chicken. Another sort of relatively simple menu. It sort of has chicken tenders served in a variety of different formats. You can have it like on top of a bowl of mac and cheese, and there's a couple different formats. But it's basically one of these sort of chicken focused menus, which is very interesting. We've been talking about it a lot and sort of trying to unpack, chicken clearly is not dead, right? We're still seeing a lot of growth. There's a lot of chicken chains at the top of the list, and consumer appetite for chicken is not over yet. It's one of our fastest growing chains, again, is Hangry Joe's. So another one, so Wingstop is very interesting, and part of why I put it in this section, although I sort of think of wings as, sort of a relatively simple food, but they've really maximized their sauces, right? So Wingstop is really tapped into flavor, have a lot of different globally inspired sauces on their menu. And I think that's part of why they've also seen phenomenal growth. Is it 14%, I think, unit growth
Yeah.
over the last year?
Yeah, and this is their like newly released in 2025 sweet chili glaze flavor. I think before it was fully released, it was workshop as the like sort of Pacific glaze flavor, but it taps into notes like chili, lemongrass, a combination of different Southeast Asian inspirations here too. So yeah, I would say that experimentation with global flavors doesn't just stop at concepts that specialize specifically in that cuisine. We're seeing that happening across our rankings too. And same here with this collaboration.
Yeah, exactly. So, Sweet Green served in a bowl. So, everyone feels good about it. But they've partnered with Cote, which is a Michelin-starred restaurant, Korean barbecue restaurant in New York City, to sort of create this menu that's really unique and kind of elevated, but also still has that global flavor profile.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anne, for running us through both beverages and global flavors, sort of like menu-related trends that are taking shape across the landscape. I feel like it would be a mistake on our part if we talk about chain restaurants in 2024 and did not mention value, because I think the value war really, really took off, both among chains and also among the press. You'll be surprised to know that according to our Lunges and Ratings platform, that the number of items classified as combo and value meal releases in 2024 was actually lower than 2023 and 2022. Though I would say that the ones that were spotlighted, I think, had a bigger sort of market splash. Um, and I think now at this juncture, I'd like to introduce a little poll just to see if folks can predict which chain had the top performing value-driven LTO based on an average of all of our metrics. So we rank these per concept, so per dish. And we took an average of all of the metrics that we talked about: purchase intent, uniqueness, frequency, draw, value. And we took that average, and one of them came out on top. So we'll give it a couple minutes before people finish. But Jack, any first impressions when it comes to value?
We're talking about one specific LTO or like the average for that chain.
Uh, one specific LTOs. Yeah, it's a specific it's one specific item. Yep.
I have no idea. I would maybe I would guess Little Caesars because I feel like there's ways to make a pretty cheap pizza, and you could probably do a pretty crazy pizza and get high on uniqueness. But I don't know. Totally guessing.
Yeah. Okay, I think votes are trickling a lot slower now, so I think this is a good place to stop. I would say that Little Caesars, overall, on a combined metric, I think has a really great suite of LTO programs and value-driven LTOs in general. But the top performing single item was actually the Frosty for $1 by Wendy's. It was rated 86% in terms of value, 77% in terms of unbranded purchase intent, a 99 composite score. I think really the fact that the label literally says is a single dollar is really going a long way here. It is a little cheating here, but the reason why I bring it up is using the same metric, so it's a combined average of all of our launches and ratings metrics. These are the top 10 performing LTOs after that Wendy's number $1 Frosty. And you see here that every single one that I highlighted in green had a specific number, of specific price tag in the name. So when we talk about value, there is always this conflict between price and what you get for what you pay for, right? And I think as an industry, we love to emphasize the fact that like you really have to nail the second, that really hammer down the value proposition and making sure that consumers get the most for what they pay for. But I think in 2024, as the economy sort of developed and as things got turbulent, I think a lot of people are really fixating on price point. And I don't know if that's really the way to go.
But I think the other thing is if you like put like a dollar amount in the name of the item, you will create additional perceived value because you framed that as a value proposition for the consumer.
Right.
Right. If you had like the $5 Your Way meal, but you didn't call it the $5 Your Way meal, you just called it the Your Way meal and just happened to be $5, the perception of value may not be as high. So there's some psychological thing happening over there.
Right. But I think now the question is, if everyone starts doing that, right, then where is the true value? When you are presented with all of these things that have different price tags on them, how do you determine what is really the best value for your money? And the reason why I feel like this discussion is it's important is because we've seen a lot of this before. I was at a conference recently where there was a discussion about value, and a lot of the value-driven war in the last year felt very reminiscent of sort of what was happening in 08 and 09. And right after, we saw a huge like swing the other way in terms of like food quality and freshness and innovation. And so I think this is sort of where the point where that we're trying to make here is that you can go as hard as you can on an aggressive value play, but it's not going to last forever. People are going to be the market's going to be saturated. People are going to be tired, and I think eventually there has to be a different approach to thinking about value, right?
Yeah,
The
I
price
think
versus
many
value
brands hurt
equation.
themselves. I think a lot of brands hurt themselves in 08, 09 by going, full in on value prop or price prop. And it takes a while to recover from there. So you're
Right.
totally right.
Yeah, it's a difficult spot because I think everyone's super price sensitive right now, especially after several years of constant price increases. I think people are excited to see a number that isn't like $18, or like $18.99 for something. But that momentum is going to last forever. And like Ted said in the chat, if you can't sustain that price point forever, you've trained your clients and your customers to expect a lower price point from you, and so your margins are going to be so much tighter when this current period eventually lapses. So it's a tough spot to be. And then finally, one extra macro trend that I'd like to talk about is this really interesting phenomenon that I'm calling, is it substance or is it vibes? It feels like this year is the year that I talk a lot about vibes. And I think the reason why there's been so much clamor about atmosphere and environment is related to just this growing phenomenon that after COVID, and with the advent of social media, with this new generation coming out into the workforce, into social and active adult life, that we're seeing sort of a death of third places. All of these headlines in front of you are pulled from the past 3 or so months now. Every single large publication is asking, where have all the third places gone? And also, what is a third place? Is it a bar? Is it a park? Is it a coffee shop, a library? Where are people really congregating and socializing? And contextualizing all of this discussion with, the loneliness crisis that we're seeing right now across the American youth. It's really interesting because we did a study in February of this year on shifting daily habits. This study was for our Elevate customers. But in that study, we polled consumers on a wide variety of different habits, going out to museums and bars and going on dates, seeing a movie, dining out alone, dining out with other people. And we took a net increase versus net decrease of that behavior compared to 12 months ago. And across the board, consumers these days are engaging in more antisocial behavior and are engaging with socialization less and less. 24% of consumers say that they're having dinner at casual restaurants less often. 29% are dining out less with groups of friends and family. And there's a similar statistic there too about dining out alone. People are just staying at home. They're on their phone. They're on social media. They're not going out and socializing. And the reason why I'm like harping on about this point is I think a lot of that does have a really strong hand in contributing to why so many of our full service brands are having a really rough time right now. It would be a mistake on our part if we talk about the chain universe in 2024 and didn't mention all of the bankruptcies and all of the closures and all of these really famous and legacy sit down places really struggling to pull in consumers and maintain their averages.
I think we've seen a decline in people's interpersonal skills over the past decade or so. Like, is it not just that they're socializing less, but do you think their ability to socialize has been compromised?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because we don't have to pick up the phone to place an order. You just interact with the screen.
Yeah.
Like, we're not forced to do it. And so we avoid it. And especially younger generations have never been forced to do it. So yeah, we're much worse at it. Now AI is just composing our emails for us. So we don't even need to, I mean, it's not getting better. So yeah.
So doesn't it feel like we're in like sort of a self-perpetuating cycle? Like, oh, I'm not really great socially, so I'm not going to go out. And then I become even worse socially, and it just sort of goes on and on and on. And then AI kicks in. Where's going to be in 20 years or 10 years? Not good, right?
It's a rough spot to be. And I think all of the social factors that we mentioned, all of the things that folks are talking about in the chat, DoorDash culture, AI, phones and connectivity, all of these things are contributing to this environment, right? Where the sit down experience is now both precious and also losing ground.
When
And
you're
it's a
walking along
really,
the sidewalk, what percentage of people, I'm definitely one of them, have
yeah,
earbuds in their ears?
probably
Like
like
100% almost, it seems, right? It's
I
rare to
would say
see
so,
someone that
yeah.
doesn't have a thing in their ear. So it's just very strange.
Yeah.
We'll have to see. It'd be interesting
So
to see if there's a backlash coming, or like it's sort of like like I know, like phones are starting to be banned from schools, right? And sort of like if the
Yeah.
younger generation will realize how broken their slightly older peers are, and so we'll sort of I can hope. I'm an optimist, so maybe there'll be like a real backlash in another 10 years where kids won't ask for phones and will hopefully engage in person more. We'll see.
I think you could have a public declaration that your earbuds are giving you brain cancer and people would still use them just as much.
yeah.
I think it's a very hard habit to break. Yeah, so who
But Jack,
knows?
but what if they're told that the industry knows it's causing them cancer and they're doing it
Then,
on
yeah,
purpose?
yeah, you got it.
Then you'll
Now the
have
conspiracies are coming
uprising.
out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is making me sad too, Britt, in the chat. But I think to sort of contextualize this in the restaurant space again, in the few minutes we have here, what do we do with all of this stuff, right? Like sit-down restaurants are still sort of a major fabric of our dining culture, and they're not going away. But clearly something has to change. This is a list of chains that fell out of our list this year. So these were part of the top 500 last year. They're no longer part of the list. And I did a little mild research. I might have missed a couple, but the chains that are highlighted in red are brands that have been formed before like 2000. So these are several decades old. Um, and I'm not saying that this is the cause of everything, but I can see an argument to saying that like some of these chains are hanging on to a level of nostalgia that people aren't connecting to. Boston Market, Godfather's Pizza, Old Spaghetti Factory, Red Mango with the frozen yogurt crave. Like it's clearly there's some level of disconnect among like younger consumers as these like trendy new like fried chicken and coffee and donut spots are coming up. What do we do if you are a sit-down restaurant focusing on a more classic dining experience? And I think the solution has to be about amping up ambience and vibes. Every 3 months, we ask consumers this question about the number one top motivation to get out of the house and go to a restaurant. And really, the second factor outside of taste and satisfying a craving is to enjoy an ambience and get out of the house. I understand that people have become a lot more antisocial, and I think it just means that it takes a lot more to get them to go out and participate and sit down than it used to be. This is a piece from the New York Times a couple of months ago called "Is the Restaurant Good or Does It Just Look Good?" And it sort of points out at like on an independent restaurant level, a lot of new trendy places are really trying to amp up the vibe, sometimes even more so than the food quality to appeal to sort of a visually obsessed generation that's all on social media, right? The quote here says that for many diners who grew up in that Instagram era, a restaurant doesn't need to have a particular aesthetic, it needs to have a memorable one. And the reason why I bring this
There's
up,
Sexy Pitch down in Miami, right? That would be a pretty good example of that, I think.
yeah, I think any major metropolitan is going to have a huge influx of these places. But for chains specifically, remodeling your entire concept takes a lot of work, and trying to change your brand reputation takes a lot of active effort. Chili's, I would say, is sort of at the forefront of that social media movement. They do so much celebrity-driven marketing, appealing to millennials and Gen X and also Gen Z. They have a lot of reality TV stars that do drink collaborations with them. They opened a Scranton location of Chili's, and then got some of the cast from The Office to participate in their campaign. Like there's a lot of active social media effort to sort of contextualize themselves in the current moment instead of being a relic of the past. And then other chains are also actively investing in infrastructure, redesigning their entire landscape to incorporate more modern colors, more modern touch points. Perkins on the left is shrinking their location size by half and changing their decor to incorporate more wood tones and a sharper green. Any new strategy to make themselves feel revitalized in the eyes of consumers whose minds and perspectives are changing by day. And the last example I have here is Starbucks, who, with the arrival of the new CEO last year, announced a strong commitment to third places and reclaiming third places. They're saying that Starbucks has moved away from its original mission of being a community space, a welcoming place where people can gather and where we serve the finest coffee with the most friendly, skilled baristas. And they're spending a lot of effort rolling out these community stores, right, that are really meant to incentivize the sit-down experience, meant to be a sort of pillar in the neighborhood, the way that they really want to. So try something, right? It's really hard to sort of make wins in this complicated landscape, but clearly, do not ignore your vibes. Do not ignore the fact that people go out to restaurants for more than just food. And I think that has to be a way forward, especially if your business model hinges on a sit-down experience. So
We
that's
have
everything.
work in a world where there's tons of pressure on chains to automate, and you can have less human interaction even than we have now already.
I mean, it's two different directions that other people are taking, right? The thing I didn't mention in this entire segment is that a bunch of other chains are completely removing their dining rooms and going exclusively to counter service or drive-through.
Yeah.
So it's tough, but I think when half of the crowd is going in one direction, maybe you go the other direction to find a new opportunity to win. We're past time here, so I'd love to just wrap it up here. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar. I hope you learned a thing or two about the sort of chain landscape in 2024. Thank you to Anne and Jack for presenting all of this with me. I really appreciate your expertise and insight on all of these different complicated industry trends, right? And here's to 2025 and seeing where things go. Like I mentioned, the next webinar in July is going to be about mid-year trends. We have a lot slated for you. The future of food safety, tariffs and economic impact, the rise of whimsy, all of these different trends that are taking place and shaping the middle of our year here. And also a sneak peek into flavors and trends that we're highlighting for our 2026 trends report. So a lot of new information, a lot of great trends forecasting. And I'm excited to see you all there.